Good day, viewers at home. We're very happy today to be with you on this platform. Today we have a very special guest, today in the world of oil and gas, globally and locally. With us today in the studio, we have His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, His Excellency, Dr Mohammad S. Barkindo. Today we are going to discuss on issues bordering around OPEC and, the world of oil and gas. With me to discuss with His Excellency in the studio, we have my colleague, Mr. Sopruchi Nwaka. Mr. Sopruchi Nwaka.
Thank you, viewers. You're welcome.
Your Excellency, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much for having me, MB. Thank you, Mr. Sopruchi.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Yes, Your Excellency, today OPEC is 60 years in existence. And at the same time, we here in Nigeria, just last 2 weeks, we celebrated our 50th, anniversary in OPEC. So far, so good. Do you have something to tell us about the milestone achieved in the 60 years?
Let me first of all thank you very much for providing this platform to me on behalf of OPEC to discuss these issues with your team and viewers across the country. You have rightly said that we have this beautiful coincidence this year when OPEC is commemorating its 60th anniversary, the diamond anniversary, and Nigeria also commemorating its 50th anniversary of its membership of OPEC. In the last 60 years, 5 founder members of this organization, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, got together on the banks of River Tigris in Baghdad, Iraq, in a place called Al-Shab Hall in downtown Baghdad, neighborhood of Bab al-Mu'atham, to establish this organization. And looking back, since this Baghdad conference, when this organization was founded to date, we can say, Alhamdulillah, first of all, we survived, because literally nobody, especially in the Western world, gave the organization any chance of surviving. And we can see many other commodity organizations could not survive. But OPEC not only survived, it navigated itself through at least 7 super oil cycles caused by all sorts of crises from 2 sides of the equation, supply and demand, and more often than not by geopolitics of the region. And at each and every turn, the organization emerged much, much stronger than when it entered into the cycle or through the crisis. It may interest you to know during these 60 years, 2 of our founder members that met in Baghdad unfortunately found themselves on opposite sides of a war that raged for 8 years. And many thought that was the end of OPEC. But thank God, with the intervention of our leaders in the organization and in the region, we have survived that war. And these 2 brotherly countries now are very strong allies supporting OPEC. We also had an unfortunate situation when one founder member country invaded another founder member country. And most said, well, this would be the end of OPEC. But we are grateful to God and to the intervention of the international community, including our leaders in our member countries. We have survived that. And these two brotherly countries are very strong allies, working together, supporting OPEC, and our decisions, implementing our decisions together. We have gone through, as I said, at least 7 cycles. Some of these cycles were triggered by excessive oversupply, when supply and demand went into disequilibrium, some by demand, some by a combination of both. Like last year when COVID struck, we saw demand contraction of unprecedented levels. In April of 2020, we saw global demand for oil contracted by 22 million barrels a day. It was unheard of, unprecedented. Yet, on the supply side of the equation, we were also facing tank tops. Inventories were about to reach unprecedented levels because of level of oversupply in circumstances where demand had contracted in an unparalleled manner. And we knew we had to act, and we did, by reaching out to our non-OPEC member countries, led by the Russian Federation, of whom we had already entered into what we called a declaration of cooperation framework that we negotiated with them in 2016. And today we can say also, alhamdulillah, we are seeing gradual and steady recovery, both on the global economy as well as on the recovery of the oil market.
Thank you, sir. We congratulate you on the success of OPEC and East Coalition members in arresting price decline and also rebalancing the market within the cycles in 2016, when there was oversupply triggered by competition for market share. Last year, we saw a similar circumstance in a very unfortunate manner, as you have just said. But greater concern lies in the long term. There is an emerging, a sustainable threat from energy transition. How long will you continue to intervene?
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very important question. This is a season of energy transition. This is the buzzword across the world, both from the producer community as well as the consumer community. OPEC, first of all, has been involved in the negotiations for climate change under the umbrella of the United Nations, literally from its inception. From day one, from the Rio Summit, we took a conscious decision in OPEC that we needed to be part and parcel of this process. We need to be in a position to provide solutions to the challenges of climate change. And we went into these negotiations with our member countries. We can therefore say with pride that we are co-authors of the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, UNFCCC, which is the Bible, if you like, of the climate change negotiation process. We are also co-authors of its protocol, the Kyoto Protocol, that was adopted in Japan. We are also co-authors of the Paris Agreement in 2015. And right now, we are fully engaged with parties across the world, both in the developed industrialized countries as well as in the developing world, both with producers of oil and consumers of oil, in order to shape an all-inclusive, comprehensive solutions to climate change. For us, we live it. It's not theory. In almost all our member countries, especially here in Nigeria, day in, day out, we see the impact of climate change, either in desertification in the north, soil erosions in the east, rising seas in the coastal areas, irregular rainfalls affecting agriculture, global warming, and it's literally the same in almost all our member countries. So for us, it's not theory. It's practical, we live it. But the challenge, my friend, is how do we rise in unison to address the greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted by several sources of energy and their use in order to decarbonize industry and the world. The transition, the energy transition, contrary to the hype, it is not a transition from one set of energy sources to another. No. According to our World Oil Outlook to 2045, all sources of energy will be required in order to meet not only current but future demand for energy. And oil and gas, for your information, will account for over 50% of the global energy mix by 2045. Over 50%, almost 53%. But we are also conscious of the fact that it would not, these sources alone would not be sufficient to meet the thirst for energy. Let's go back to basics. The projections to 2045 indicate that additional 1.7 to 1.8 billion people will come into this world. Majority of these new souls that will join us in this world will be coming from the developing countries. Right now, in the developing countries, including here in Nigeria, climate change and energy poverty are two sides of the same coin. Whatever we do here, we must comprehensively address these two challenges. In sub-Saharan Africa, our numbers show over 600 million people have no access to electricity. 600 million in sub-Saharan Africa alone. In Africa, about 900 million people have no access to clean cooking fuels. Clean cooking fuels. So we are facing abject energy poverty. And yet, we are the worst affected by climate change. Therefore, we have every reason to join the rest of the world in finding inclusive, sustainable solutions to climate change. However, we cannot do that at the expense of energy poverty. The United Nations, for the first time in SDG 7, made it mandatory, made it a right for you and me and everybody to have access to energy. It's not a privilege. It is our right. It's the right of everyone to have access to affordable, sustainable energy. This is what we signed up. Therefore, in trying to address climate change, we should not lose sight of the other side of the coin. And here I would like to commend our member countries. I would like to commend the government of Nigeria and civil society for rising to this challenge. We follow very closely developments here and in all our member countries, how our governments and civil society working together are rising to this challenge of our time.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your tenure as the Secretary General of the OPEC has been very eventful. You are in your second tenure now. And many are wondering, how were you able to navigate, within, countries that prior to your, appointment cannot sit on the same table and discuss. And today, you are able to bring them, to the same table, and all of them are in support of what OPEC is doing. Countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and America. People would like to ask, what is the secret behind, that performance?
Thank you very much, MB. There is no secret in this business. Our American friends call us a fishbowl because we're very transparent, we're very open. What you said is right. The organization itself was bedeviled with these differences, mainly driven by geopolitics, but also between members of our organization and other leading producing countries like the Russian Federation, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Mexico, and of course the United States, the biggest producer. I think the last cycle, not the COVID cycle, we used to think and believe that the last cycle, 2014 to 2016, when prices crashed to below $10, when for the first time we saw inventories, stocks of crude oil and products around the world, it's one of our key metrics, rose to historic levels of over 400 million barrels over the 5-year average. This is the metric we use to measure the stability of the market, because there is an inverse relationship, quantitative inverse relationship between stocks and prices. When stocks rise above that 5-year average, prices go down south. So when you hear me in most of my advocacy saying we are working together with our partners to maintain stability in the oil market on a sustainable basis, I'm referring to that metric. But in the summer of 2016, when I assumed office in Vienna, stock levels went to over 400 million barrels over the 5-year average. And therefore prices crashed. They went down south. And because of the geopolitics of the time, it was almost impossible to get the players around the table to discuss. Some had broken diplomatic relations, they had no embassies, there was no communication between them. Their ministers could not be seen talking to each other, and so on. But I must tell you, I got a very good guidance when I left here to Vienna from President Muhammad Buhari, who nominated me to be elected to this job. Himself being an OPEC veteran, he's the only president and head of state today who also served as OPEC minister in the 70s and kept interest in the oil world and OPEC throughout this time. And we had some lengthy conversations with him, and he gave me the benefit of his thoughts, advice, and guidance. And as soon as I settled down in Vienna and got all my briefs from my colleagues, I decided to hit the road, and I visited almost all the capitals to introduce myself to the leadership and to begin to bring these issues to their table and making it abundantly clear to them. The decisions are up to you. We look up to you as leaders to bury your differences, or at least set them aside for now, because what is facing us could be catastrophe. All, you remember, all our countries went into recession.
Yeah.
And that's when the president was elected, when he came into office. And as I hopped from capital to capital, meeting the leaderships, thank God they listened to me, they gave me audience, they listened to me, they asked appropriate questions, they also gave me their advice, their benefit of thoughts. At the end of the day, they agreed to mandate their ministers to return to Vienna. And the rest is history. On the 10th of December 2016, we were able to sign this historic pact. Historic in the sense that it was the first time OPEC sat down with these non-OPEC producers and agreed to sign a pact, a framework to guide our cooperation. And we had 10 of them, led by the Russian Federation. And President Putin was very, very understanding and very supportive of that initiative of ours. And he has remained so till now. And he gave me his word that we will be standing shoulder to shoulder with you. We support you. We welcome your election as Secretary General. And there is no reason not to beat our chest today to say that the declaration of cooperation has worked beautifully well. And we didn't even know that COVID was coming. We had no idea that we were going to have COVID. We thought that was the worst cycle, and we had navigated that cycle successfully. We were on the path of recovery. Our countries started exiting recession, including here in Nigeria. Prices were rebounding beautifully, and boom, 2020, we had one virus that shut down the whole world. And we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just fell back on this framework, this model, and continued to work from last year to now. In 2020 alone, we held 9 ministerial conferences, almost every month. It had never happened. This year so far, we have held 7. 7 already. Ministerial.
7 months.
Yeah. 7. Every month we are holding ministerial conferences, because we cannot afford to remove our feet from the brakes or our hands from the steering wheel because of these uncertainties. Every day I wake up, I check the global COVID infection rate. I check on my phone, on my iPad that they send to me. They give me the rate of vaccinations. They give me the rate of hospitalizations, fatalities, and related data. We are grateful and very hopeful. Now the world has vaccinated over 4 billion people. Those who have at least one shot, one dose. But this is barely half of the global population. Barely half. Now, the rest are mainly in developing countries who are struggling to have access to these vaccines, who are also struggling to sensitize their people that it's absolutely necessary for you and it's very safe for you to take these vaccines. So you have this artificial divide between the rich industrialized north and the developing countries of the south. And WHO keeps telling us that unless and until everyone is vaccinated, we are not safe. The fact that you are vaccinated here with your family and your neighbor is not, you are not safe. So, and with the benefit of what happened last year, we are very, very sensitive to actions that governments may take. They can surprise us. They may shut down. And the moment they start this shutting down, the global economic recovery that we are hoping now will be robust this year, coming from that low base of contraction of 3.5% global growth last year. Our numbers are showing at least 5.5% growth this year.
Wow.
Now, this is dependent on us continuing to march forward with these vaccinations, containing the mutations, the variants, and their spread. Because otherwise, governments may force to take actions that you and I would not like to see. Nobody wants to go back to lockdowns again. So, but the market is very sensitive to that, and hence the relative volatility that you see in prices. The moment they get some bearish numbers from WHO, you see prices going down. Exactly. So, but we remain cautiously optimistic that the worst is over. We remain cautiously optimistic that governments around the world will continue to do the needful going forward to save lives.
Just a follow-up question to that. Your Excellency, you told us, about your engagement with Russia. And I know the listener would like to know, what is your relationship with America during that period?
Yes, it was evident, and we acknowledge it when we signed the Declaration of Cooperation on the 10th of December 2016, that a very important player was not on the table. Of course, we had Russia with the other countries, but what about the United States, the biggest producer? You all know about the encumbrances of the antitrust laws of the US and so on. And unfortunately, over the years, in the last 60 years, OPEC has not had a fair media representation in the US because of various other geopolitical issues in the 70s and 80s and what have you. So American officials are always very shy to be even seen with me publicly. And we agreed that we should not give up. We should explore other innovative ways to reach out to the US. Now, what did we do? Most of these US companies are operating in our countries. They are operating in our countries either as joint venture partners or PSCs and so on. So I set out to the US to meet friends, to confer with them, to consult with them, to get their advice. And we ended up meeting with the major players, the major companies, especially the independents in the shale basins of the US, especially the Permian, the Bakken, Niobrara, New Mexico, and so on. We converged finally after a lot of behind-the-scene work by our friends also. We have friends there who understand OPEC, who believe in OPEC, and they helped us to convene this first meeting in Houston at the end of 2016, beginning 2017, where we broke bread, as they said. It was the first meeting that OPEC sat down with American companies on American soil, discussing about the state of the market and the industry. And we were pleasantly surprised that nearly 100 of them showed up.
Wow.
It was a large gathering of CEOs of the companies. And they came, they met with us. We had a very good meeting. At the end of the meeting, their spokesperson, in responding and concluding the meeting, said he now realized that we are all in the same boat. We are all producing the same commodity, whether it is Bonny Light in Nigeria or West Texas Intermediate.
Yeah.
It's all crude oil, and we sell to the same market. And the decisions that are being taken in OPEC, they are not only for OPEC member countries, but affect all producing in the whole industry. Therefore, he was glad and congratulated us for this initiative. And he was reporting this, although it was Chatham House rule, he needed our consent to report this to the White House. And everybody applauded. The rest is history. And ever since, we continued this working relationship with them. We meet regularly with them. We consult each other. We confer. And this is in the best interest of all of us, all producing countries and consuming countries. Because with the biggest producer on the table, the biggest companies in the world joining us, the transition itself, the energy transition itself, would be more inclusive.
Yeah.
The stability of the global oil market would be enhanced. And you would have certainty in terms of planning. It's a very capital-intensive industry.
Yeah.
Our countries depend on revenues from this industry. So nobody wants volatility, neither the producer nor the consumer. So far, so good. We have this working relationship growing and going forward. In addition to that, we have also reached out to the consuming countries. At the moment, we have high-level dialogues with the European Union, for example. We also have with China, with India, we have. So OPEC is on all fronts and has been in the last 4 or 5 years. Because times have changed, we have to adapt to the changing energy dynamics in the world and the global energy scene.
We have a lot of OPEC countries with very huge, very robust funds, sovereign funds, that could help out the industry. Is there any way OPEC is working to support its members from, do some kind of internal cross-subsidization across countries to see how petroleum projects could be sustained, given the hostility from international funding, international lenders?
Thank you very much. This is a very apt question. The challenge of the industry in accessing investment capital is rising almost by the day. And as you rightly said, the climate activists, the NGOs, and their allies have now targeted the courts and the financial community. Of course, they have been working with civil society, mobilizing civil opinion against hydrocarbons. But this is new and is gaining momentum to the extent that several of our member countries have reported to us their inability to conclude funding and investment deals with banks and creditors because those banks and creditors have signed some agreements of disclosures in funding hydrocarbons. Therefore, we all as an industry, it's not an OPEC challenge per se, it is an industry challenge. And we are now mobilizing the industry to face this challenge, It may interest you to know that even the World Bank, in which our members are shareholders, are now faced with this obstacle, let alone banks on Wall Street and so on. Just this September, we are converging in Vienna, virtually of course, with all the countries in the Declaration of Cooperation, the 24, and many other stakeholders to discuss this same very issue. We need to come up with a common position with regards to the issue of capital investments in the industry, the access to the capital, and feed into the negotiations leading to COP26 in Glasgow. Because the UNFCCC COP26, the Conference of the Parties, when it convenes in Glasgow, one of the key issues that they will discuss and look for a resolution is on this issue. The climate activists are pushing that COP should endorse their position for zero funding to oil and gas in order to meet their target of net zero emissions by 2050. They are linking the two. But we have a different view. I have just mentioned to you, at the moment, there is no one single source of energy that will meet our current demand. Before COVID struck last year, this world was consuming an average of 100 million barrels every single day. Every single day. And yet, we have endemic energy poverty, where our people have no access to electricity, our people have no access to gasoline, to diesel, and so on, cooking fuels. So, if now you are advocating for zero funding to this industry, which sources of energy will replace hydrocarbons? None. None. To 2045, the projection is renewables in general will be less than 20% of the energy mix. Less than 20%. So you are sowing the seeds of fresh energy crisis that will sentence the people of the developing countries to perpetuity in energy poverty. You are focusing only on yourselves, forgetting that the science of climate change has taught us through the IPCC, the same agency that you have set up, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the scientific organ of the UNFCCC, that this is a global challenge that requires a global solution. You cannot address this issue from the prism of the rich industrialized countries. The world goes beyond Europe, beyond North America, beyond Japan. And we have said, population-wise, the forecast of 1.7 to 1.8 billion people that will come into this world between now and 2045, more than 50% from the same developing countries, that will further complicate the energy poverty situation that we have found ourselves. So we are working with all these countries we will convene in Vienna, and hopefully we will have common positions that will take to Glasgow in November of this year.
Excellency, let me quickly ask this question before we round up. You talked about the ministerial meeting, the frequent ministerial meetings that you held almost on a monthly basis. I would like to ask you, what part of this job is most challenging to you?
Well, let me answer you this way. If you look at OPEC as an orchestra, you may equate my role as that of a conductor. So I cannot say this is less important, this is more important, this is more difficult, this is less challenging. The conductor is looking at the whole orchestra and making sure that the symphony and everything goes in sync. Even if one tune goes out, you will see he's shivering and giving directions. Yeah. So, but you have to work with people. You have to build relationships with people, and it's a very exciting job because you meet all sorts of people around the world. Every day you are learning from everybody you meet. You have something to learn from them as you move from one country to another. As you meet with these people, listening to their own perspectives that may be completely alien to what you used to know. But if you are interested, like I am, in learning, I found it very, very useful, very enlightening. I thank God and I thank President Muhammad Buhari for giving me the opportunity of my life. This year, I'm clocking 35 years of my sojourn in OPEC.
Wow.
As first as a delegate representing my country, and then later on as a member of the Economic Commission Board, the ECB, which is the economic think tank of OPEC, for 15 years, and later on served on the Board of Governors as governor representing my country, and also served in 2006 when there was a deadlock. They couldn't agree on the substantive Secretary General. I was asked to go and serve as acting Secretary General pending the time they resolve the issue. So I have, throughout my working life, I have been associated with this organization. I'm probably the only one that has served in all the organs of the organization and ended up being Secretary General. And I can tell you it's a very, very exciting job. And we are very conscious of the weight of responsibility and the high expectations on us. So we are always trying to do all we can not to let you people down.
Just quickly, one major issue that we see in OPEC, a very slight divide between countries that are developing very rapidly. And we see countries that are almost sinking in resource costs. And I don't know whether it has bothered OPEC to lay some kind of economic model that will aid some of its member countries that are struggling out of resource costs to accelerate development. Is there any kind of economic guidance OPEC could see some of them, which are mainly domiciled in sub-Saharan Africa, to match up with their colleagues in Middle East and elsewhere?
The differences you referred to, they are normal differences, because when you have a grouping of countries coming together to form an organization such as OPEC, they are coming with their various backgrounds, unique socio-economic and political circumstances, maybe also different aspirations, and of course different capacities. But the founding members decided in the statute of the organization to make all members equal, whether you are the biggest producer or you are the smallest producer, or you joined today or you joined in 1960, you are all equal. Your budget contribution is the same. The smallest country pays the same with Saudi Arabia. But occasionally, these differences emerge during meetings because every minister goes there to protect the interests of his country. For example, budget. Every member country decides on a benchmark for its annual budget. They fix it on a price benchmark. So it is your responsibility as Minister of Oil representing your country to make sure that the decisions that are taken will ensure that you meet your target. Otherwise, you may derail the aspirations of the budget. And here, more often than not, you have differences. There are those who have higher benchmarks, those who have lower benchmarks. But at the end of the day, they all come to converge. They all come to converge. Now, today, 7 of our member countries are from Africa. 7. Algeria, Libya, Nigeria, Angola, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Congo.
Wow.
They are all from Nigeria, from Africa. The smaller producers, they have capacity challenges. They may have the reserves, but they have huge other complicated challenges vis-a-vis the biggest producers. And what the experience of COVID has shown us is that we need to work together even much, much more closely than before. We must go beyond supply-demand balance projections, decisions to ensure stability in oil prices, to open areas of cooperation between these countries.
Yeah.
This is one of the lessons of COVID. So discussions are currently ongoing in the participating countries of the DOC, the Declaration of Cooperation, to answer your question, because they all realize that we need to move forward.
Thank you very much.
Let's take it home, and end it at home.
Okay.
Recently, the National Assembly, both chambers, passed the much-awaited PIB. You were there when it started from the beginning, and it was, passed recently and waiting for Mr. President's assent. What aspirations do you think that holds for Nigeria in terms of what Mr. Sopuruchi just said now, utilizing, the proceeds of oil, for developmental gains before probably that's 2045 that you're talking about, or 2040?
There is no doubt that one of the good news that came out of the National Assembly is the passage of the long-awaited petroleum industry bill. I think this bill has been in and out of the chambers probably over 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And some of us that have been associated with this bill for quite some time, we were all very excited. I personally issued a statement from Vienna commending the National Assembly for this feat. And I recall I said to them that by this act, they have engraved their names in gold. The petroleum industry bill seeks to reposition this industry on the path of growth and sustainable development. We have talked about the capital intensiveness of this industry. And most of this capital nowadays is not supposed to be coming from government, it's supposed to be coming from the private sector, from international oil companies, from banks that we are talking of now crowding out the industry from access to funds, but without certainty of the fiscal regimes in a country such as Nigeria, it's extremely difficult for any bank, for any investor to come and take an investment decision. And the fact that we have started the discussions, we have started the process of this bill, we had put the world and the industry on notice that we may change the terms. So you can understand why they all held back their investments, waiting, because you came out and told the world that you are working on a bill that will transform the industry, will bring the terms and conditions not only of fiscal but regulatory to current international best practices. So any investor reading that, hearing that, will have to pause.
Have to wait.
Yes, wait. And this has taken quite a while. And therefore the industry continued to rely on government more often than not, with cash calls to fund the upstream, continuing with the subsidy of petroleum products in order to make sure that our citizens have access to energy. But with the passage of the bill, hopefully, and the immediate implementation of the act when it is signed, this will completely transform the industry in this country. This is what we have been waiting for a very long time. And the countries in the region, in the African sub-region, were also waiting to see the outcome of this process here, because they know whatever happens to Nigeria is most likely going to impact on them as well. So don't be surprised if some of them start also adapting some of the terms and the conditions that we may finally sign into
the new law.
Into the new law. So once again, I want to use your platform to congratulate Mr. President, congratulate the National Assembly, as well as Minister Timi Silva and Melikiari of GMD of NNPC and their teams for a great job. We are all grateful to what they have been able to do together with the National Assembly. This is priority number one for the industry, and we wish them all the best in the implementation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Just finally, Value Chain magazine is our local, oil and gas magazine in Nigeria.
Thank you.
And I don't know what review do you have, on this value chain, so that our listeners, can listen to you.
Well, I first came across value chain during our commemoration of our 60th anniversary and 50th anniversary of Nigeria into OPEC. And you so kindly and very generously reported OPEC, reported our activities. You were extremely generous, very kind. And on behalf of OPEC, I would like to thank you very much and commend you and endorse value chain, not only to our OPEC member countries, but to all researchers, readers, public commentators of energy, of the world of oil and gas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. On this note, viewers, I would like to thank you, for having time with us as we speak to the Secretary General of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries on Value Chain Online TV. This is the first interview, of course, that we are having, and we are having it with a very, very big fish, if you may ask me. And we are very, very happy that he granted us his time, and we thank him very much for being with us. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
So, thank
Thank you very much.
Yeah.